All right, well, we will get started. Welcome, everyone. Again, just throwing it out there, we do this, this event in meetings mode so everyone can direct message each other. Please feel free to introduce yourself in chat. I think it's great, you see someone's name, title, what they're interested in, and connections have been made through this chat. So highly encourage you to make those intros and connect in the DMs of chat. But welcome, my name is Anna Consani. I have served as head of community and partnerships for Springboard for the last 7 years. I am now in an advisory role for today's event with the Women's Health Innovation Coalition. Springboard's been around for 20 plus years, running programs for women-led tech and healthcare companies. We have 850 plus alumni that have generated over 30 billion in value. And over the years, we've had many women focusing on women's health. And so in recent years, we've really decided to double down our focus and priority in building support for the women's health innovation ecosystem. We launched the Women's Health Innovation Coalition in 2020 to bring together organizations advocating, promoting greater attention, research, and investment in diseases, conditions, and indications that exclusively or predominantly impact women. The coalition's framework includes 7 segments within women's health. We have autoimmune, oncology, aging and bone health, sexual and gynecological health, reproductive health, heart health, and cognitive and brain health. After a successful forum series in 2021 last year, and out of a lot of support for driving research, innovation, and investment, we decided to launch another innovation forum series as a way to bring together the community of each segment and highlight the women doing work in each space. First, we will be hearing from patient advocacy organizations, really looking to highlight the voice of the patient and how that can inform us on where we need to focus our research and innovation. This piece is sometimes overlooked. And then we'll be highlighting founders and funders in the space. So really looking at the state of investment. And again, our whole mission of advancing innovation within women's health. So I guess with that, we will get started. Just a huge thanks to our 2 sponsors, Roche and Organon, for making it possible to do a second forum series this year. So want to kick it off by introducing Stephanie Sassman with Genentech, head of the women's health portfolio, and allow her to give a quick welcome. Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Anna. My name is Stephanie Sassman, and I am the portfolio lead for women's health at Genentech and Roche. And I'm very proud to be leading a cross-company effort to bring forward integrated solutions and co-create end-to-end patient experience for women with key healthcare system stakeholders. And our aim is really to harness the assets we have across Roche, across our pharma, our diagnostics, but also to partner with innovative startups who are really working to make the healthcare journey more personal for women. And we are thrilled to be partnering again this year with Springboard, as who better to bring forward solutions for women's health, but women entrepreneurs and women leaders. It's 2022, and we know that women's health issues are still being sidelined and silenced, no matter how rich a country that you live in. And we truly need to band together to work on delivering women-centered care across diseases. There's really so much that we can do together to help women reclaim their lives and thrive beyond their illness. So I'm really pleased to be joined today with a few of other reps from our company. We have Kian Feng, who's coming from our diagnostic business. We have Patricia Lehane, who is coming from our Roche Pharma clinical business. We have Lena Adisa, who works with me in women's health. And we also have Nafsika Horst, who is in regulatory affairs. And we're very committed to this approach, and we're very committed to autoimmune diseases. We have a long history in autoimmune diseases as a company. We also know that most autoimmune diseases disproportionately impact women. And there's a need for an understanding of why this is the case and how we can bring about solutions to address this, really starting at the healthcare bench, starting in the labs, all the way through the entire treatment journey that women experience, through the way that they get awareness of their symptoms, to the way that they get diagnosed, to how they're treated and how they're supported. And truly, I'm really thrilled by many of the exciting startups that you amazing women are bringing forward, and the fact that there's so many different approaches that are really democratizing the access that women will have, and men, of course, as well, with autoimmune disease, to improving their patient journey. So really excited to kick this off. Thank you again to Springboard, and thank you to all of the passionate members of the Women's Health Coalition. I know it's going to be an exciting session. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. And anyone on the Roche Genentech team who's on this call, please give your introductions. I know folks will be looking forward to connecting, and feel free to reach out to Stephanie as well, because she's looking forward to, I think, meeting many of you. So thank you again. Also supporting the series is Organon. So to give welcome remarks, I'd like to share a video from Rebecca Mandel, Head of Federal Policy and Gov Affairs. I think we have her video set up. Oh, Ali, I think you'll need to connect the audio.
Important topic.
Here we go.
My name is Rebecca Mandel, and I lead the Federal Government Affairs and Policy team at Organon, a global healthcare company focused on women's health. At Organon, our vision is to create a better and healthier every day for women. We believe that women are foundational to a healthier world. As many of you are already aware, women face unique challenges across a variety of health issues, and there's a lot of work to be done to ensure there is understanding of the differences between men and women, including how symptoms present and how treatment needs, time to diagnosis, prognosis, and care experiences may differ, just to name a few. As we look toward our goal of health equity among women, we have to first look back at our history. For example, until the 1990s, women were excluded from clinical research, which led to a shortage of data on how medicine affects women differently than men. This was just 30 years ago. Today, while women are included in clinical trials, we have to ask ourselves if there are opportunities to see equity. Switching gears to another example. During the COVID-19 pandemic, research shows that a higher percentage of women than men skipped recommended preventative services, including 38% who missed a routine checkup or routine test, and 23% who skipped a medical test or treatment. On top of that, 1 in 10 women in the US are uninsured, and 1 in 4 reported cost-related non-adherence to medication, compared with 1 in 7 men. With today's focus on autoimmune disease, I want to point to another difference between women and men. Several autoimmune studies indicate that hormonal changes during puberty, pregnancy, and menopause can play a role in the development or severity of autoimmune diseases. As a result, they're more prevalent in women than men at a 2-to-1 ratio, while a 2000 study identified an even wider ratio of 7-to-1 for lupus in particular. These are just a couple of examples. What does this mean for the future of health among women? Without a doubt, a lot of progress has been made to date, but we have more to do to better understand and address her unique needs as a woman and the importance of access to care and treatment affordability. The good news in the autoimmune space is that the treatment landscape is rapidly evolving, with a number of treatments available, including biosimilar options. These are medicines that are highly similar to FDA-approved brand name medications that have reached patent expiration, also referred to as reference products. Biosimilars are approved by the FDA after rigorous evaluation and are tested to ensure no clinically meaningful differences from a reference product. Biosimilars also have the potential to reduce spending pressures on healthcare systems by introducing competition and enabling a greater number of people to access important medicines. In other words, biosimilars represent more potential treatment options, which can mean lower costs and increased access for patients, potentially closing the gap in her care. More broadly, potential savings to healthcare systems yielded from biosimilars could be reinvested into research and development across some of the most important disease areas that continue to have high unmet need. We recognize all that is being done for women's health, but there is a lot more work to be done. And that's why at Organon, we are so motivated to provide a healthier future for women and for their families and communities around the world. Thank you, Springboard Enterprises Women's Health Innovation Coalition, for giving us all the opportunity to ignite an important conversation.
Great. And again, thank you to Organon for supporting this year. They'll be a part of 3 of our forum series, and we're happy to have them involved. All right, well, without further ado, we'll move into our first panels. Like I said, we'll be setting up, starting the event with a conversation really with the perspective of the patient's voice, patient advocacy groups, and then we'll have our second half be more focused on the founder and funder perspective. We'll wrap up with a short policy update, and then we'll let you guys go. So I'd like to invite on camera our 3 panelists: Estella, Mata-Carcamo, Juana, Mata, Molly Murray, and Mary Wheatley. I guess 4. Great. Get you guys all on. Perfect. All right, well, we will get started. So in this conversation, wanting to hear each of your perspectives, also really wanting to set the context for autoimmune disease as a whole. So as we know, 78% of those affected by autoimmune conditions in the US are women. First question is, what do you want women suffering with autoimmune diseases to know, or at least feel maybe comforted or supported by, or advances that you all are advocating for? Mary, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I think I would start with just wanting women to know that you're not alone, that our organizations and others like them are here to support you and your family and your support network, and connect you with resources that can help you in your journey. And that's, why we're here. We're all very mission-oriented organizations. I think the other thing I would say is that there's hope for the future. And I know we're going to talk more about that, but in terms of the research we support and the things that we're working on in terms of future treatments and even cures, that by participating in that research directly or by increasing the awareness, you're paving a road for a better tomorrow.
Amazing. And why don't we start just quick introductions? Mary, why don't you give just a quick intro and what you guys do?
Sure. So I'm Mary Wheatley. It's my pleasure to serve as CEO of the National Scleroderma Foundation, and we have 3 mission priorities. So support, education, and research, all focused on scleroderma.
Fantastic. Molly, can we get your introduction?
Sure, absolutely. I'm Molly Murray, and I'm President and CEO of the Autoimmune Association, and we are a patient advocacy organization as well. And we focus on advocacy, awareness, education, and research.
Amazing. And Juana and Estella, will you guys make your intros?
Yes, I can start. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Estella Mata. I'm one of the co-founders of Looms for Lupus, and we're mission focused on advocacy, support, resources, education, and we're excited to be here today.
And good morning, everyone. I'm Juana Mata. I am the other co-founder of Looms for Lupus. I'm also a patient, a lupus patient, and with other autoimmune conditions. And we support not only the patients, but the caregivers and loved ones as well.
Wonderful. Great. So why don't we go back to Molly and just get your perspective on, what's kind of the leading priority message that you're wanting to send to patients?
Yeah, I think that, Mary hit on some of this, right? There's a community out there for you, and there's resources available for you to tap into. Any three of our organizations, we're really focused on, driving awareness and, getting information into the hands of, patients who need them. And that's, whether you're someone who's looking for a diagnosis, you're recently diagnosed, or you've, have been dealing with an autoimmune disease for, quite some time, that there's, we're really exist to kind of meet you where you are and provide the resources that you need. So I think, yes, certainly that there's a community of support out there, and encourage patients who are dealing with autoimmune diseases to tap into that. But the other thing that I would say, sort of in the context of this conversation, is that we believe you. We know that getting a diagnosis to an autoimmune disease can be really difficult. We say on average it's 4.5 years to get a diagnosis. Oftentimes patients see, on average 4 doctors. And so, this is a journey, and these symptoms that arise are complex and can be difficult to diagnose. And I think to Rebecca Mandel's point, earlier, just sort of in this intro of this history of not having women involved in clinical trials, diagnosis and in our past of hysteria, and not believing women when they say they're experiencing kind of symptoms. And I think, by and large, our healthcare community, and the providers in it, they're excellent. They're there to service the patient and provide care. But too often I hear stories, I think that Juana can get into, and others, where you show up in a healthcare clinical setting and your symptoms are not to be believed. And so I think a lot of that is the complexity of the disease, and so just driving awareness in the healthcare community and among patients to understand what it is that patients are facing. So I would add that in, is that, there's a community of support, and we believe you.
Yeah. And Stephanie chimed in, empathy is key. I totally agree. And that's where I think this starts. Estella, why don't we go over to you all? Kind of what's your main message to the patients that you serve?
Yes, and I think like Molly and Mary were just touching on, awareness is key. Early diagnosis is also very important. So raising the awareness about the symptoms, what to look for, how to be proactive, how to start documenting, getting access to care. And if you don't have access to care, knowing who you can reach out to learn about these tools. Also getting tools on adherence to treatments, empowering the individual not just to advocate for themselves and take charge of their care, but also to look for support. I think support is very, very important, because with support, you can support the individuals with raising awareness about the condition, learning about their condition. Everyone is so unique. We all have different bodies. We're all structured very differently. So we need to understand that we have the power in our voice to not only speak for ourselves, but to advocate for others. So awareness is key. Also adherence to treatments and continuing to keep all these medical appointments is important. Learning and understanding healthcare literacy, learning what these terms mean, making sure that you're following up with the treatments, with your authorizations. It is so complex. The healthcare system is so complex. And I think we need to start educating, start raising more awareness, and empowering the individuals to take charge. And lastly, self-care, I think, is also very important. I know as a mother, I always put my daughter's care in front of mine. So we need to be able to do this for us, so we can then continue to be able to help others. And if we don't do it for ourselves, we can't help, right? We can't pour from an empty cup. So those are a couple of things that I would advise others and or implore others to do. And yes, empathy is huge as well.
Yeah. Juana, why don't we go to you, and I'll just kind of tee up the next question, which is, what is your biggest roadblock you run up against, and how can the coalition or other organizations take action against some of these roadblocks, whether that be policy or other sorts of challenges?
Definitely. Well, one of the biggest roadblocks I would think is being dismissed. Being dismissed, as the ladies mentioned before, a lot of the times we are dismissed by the doctor, not because they don't think that we're not doing okay, but because we look okay, especially with autoimmune conditions such as lupus. Most of the patients with lupus look okay from the outside, yet we are living a struggle in the inside of our body. So definitely being dismissed is one of the biggest roadblocks I think we face. I always say that, the doctors are the experts, and they deserve all the respect, yet we as patients, we know when something is wrong. We are the CEOs of our body. We need to advocate for ourselves. So definitely still giving the doctors all the respect, but yet advocating for ourselves and talking and making sure that we're heard. So being dismissed is one of the biggest roadblocks. And what we want as an organization, I think it's more education, more awareness for people, not only to understand, but to learn how to advocate for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super important. Curious, Molly, going back to you, kind of roadblocks you guys come up against, and maybe, if there are either specific policies or initiatives that you're working on to overcome some roadblocks you come up against.
Sure. I think, there's a couple different ways to look at this. I'll take this from the public, policy perspective, right? And roadblocks that you can kind of, just run up against just in terms of getting your message across, right? I think, oftentimes if you're dealing with, Congress or, agency officials and whatnot, like there's a lot of competing priorities, right? And so sometimes it's being able to kind of get through the clutter and getting through when they're pulled in lots of different directions and have lots of different things to focus on. We're seeing that right now, right? With the crisis in Ukraine, and obviously this is something that's important and something that needs to be focused on. It's like how do you from a health advocacy perspective, kind of be able to have these conversations with needed folks as well. And I think, there's a lot of turnover that you face in these agencies and on Capitol Hill as well. And so trying to maintain those relationships and build new relationships, especially when, there's elections and turnover, I think particularly, we've seen a lot of that this last year, even with COVID and staff who's dealing with that, right? So I think, as we look forward, how do you get through that? I always say that the patient story is really important, and that is the greatest tool that we have in order to communicate to legislators and to agency folks and others and other stakeholders. And that is they've got at their disposal all the facts and figures and statistics, right? But we're in a position to really humanize those statistics and humanize that information in a way that is very, very powerful. And so I just, it might sound cliche, but it's really, that patient story is so incredibly powerful and important. And so we, I can kind of get into some of the policy issues we're focusing on, but in terms of roadblocks and kind of, how to get through, I think those are some thoughts that I have.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think, something that we're working on in the coalition is with the help of G2G, our political partners, is putting together more briefings where we bring that patient story with the facts and figures, with the innovators, and giving that full picture, because I think, we can all attack it in different ways and try to build those relationships. But as we do it, hopefully more cohesively and repeatedly, consistently, then people will listen. So it's great to have all of you in support of that. And we definitely continue to work on solving it from that angle. Mary, why don't we get your perspective on that? Any other roadblocks that have come up from your side and how you're kind of attacking that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think Estella and Juana definitely touched on, bureaucracy aside. One of the other great roadblocks that we run into is just the general lack of awareness and how serious autoimmune conditions are, even if you don't look sick. And so getting into the impact these conditions have on the lives of those that are affected is really serious. But a lot of times we have to overcome just that general lack of understanding when we're talking to members of Congress or other regulatory agencies about what the condition even is that we're talking about, or the group of conditions, before we can get to that piece of how it's actually impacting a population and what we're asking, to be done to address it. So I do think it's really important, as Molly was saying, to personalize that. And so I think I would, just thinking of everyone on the call today and the role that they could play in that, of just, opening that door in your communities and letting people know why this cause is important to you, and making it personal. And, as Molly was saying, you don't have to memorize a bunch of statistics and facts and figures. We have all of that and can provide that, in the rooms where it's needed, but just sharing your story of, I know I have one of my great support group leaders on the call today, but, just opening that up and saying, did you know that I serve as a support group leader for the National Scleroderma Foundation? And this is why this is so important to me. And you just never know, what someone else is going through and what that may mean to them or who they're connected to, and just helping to build that awareness in the community. I think that is one really big thing. I think the other thing in terms of what we ask for in terms of policy and those kinds of things, research funding is one that we're all asking for. We need more research into these conditions. And one of the good things about this group of conditions is that they're all interrelated. And so the science really builds on itself. And so that's where I think the coalition really comes in, because we can advocate together and there is power in numbers. And so that's really powerful too, of connecting the science and the numbers of people affected, but also, those facts and figures that are so important too.
Yeah. And I want to ask a few questions specifically to Juana and just self-advocacy, but if we have time, come back to something that we're also seeing is not only, bringing together organizations within the autoimmune community, but like autoimmune conditions affect so many other segments within women's health. And so often it comes back to autoimmune or chronic conditions that, make other conditions worse. So making sure that we're also working across those niches or within women's health so that, again, we can advocate on a bigger scale. So if we have time, we'll come back to talking a little bit more about that. But I want to just go to you and, ask, how has living with your autoimmune condition inform your advocacy work? I think it is extremely courageous to not only kind of speak of your condition, but also then, kind of dedicate your life's work to supporting others. So would love just to hear your perspective.
Yeah, well, I can attest today that I am alive today because I advocated for myself. And one of the reasons I really share my story is to empower others on the importance of self-advocacy and taking charge of their overall health. In 2009, when I was diagnosed with lupus, I knew something was wrong with me. I went to the doctor. I was dismissed. I was told that I looked fine, that I could go home. After insisting and persisting, I was able to get lab work done. In fact, I was critically ill, and I was sent to ER. And a few hours later, I was sent to the ICU because my platelets were low. So that's one of the reasons that to me is really important, not only to share my story, but also to talk to others and let them know how important it is for self-advocacy. I am alive today because I advocated for myself. If I had not, I would not be here today. So definitely I do want others to know that how important it is. Like I mentioned earlier, we as patients, we know when something is not right. We need to talk. We need to make sure that we are heard. So definitely my advocacy started when my self-advocacy saved my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, now just hearing from each of you, I think if a woman feels like, something is wrong and they need to self-advocate, especially if it's some sort of condition where it's not super, known or obvious, knowing that they have organizations, tools, people that they can go to for that support to self-advocate. Because I think that can sometimes feel really lonely of like, okay, I'm been told I need to stand up for myself. I need to advocate, but how do I do that? Do I go to a different doctor? Do I look up statistics? Do I Google, where do I go? And so, I don't know if any of you want to comment on that too, of just like what those next steps or, places that those patients can go, or how best to self-advocate, I guess.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So one of the things that we have been doing is, I think, educating and also bringing in the providers, the care team, right? And that's one of the things that we do. We work with rheumatologists, which is, the main provider or resource that a lot of the autoimmune patients go to, right, to get their care. We already have a shortage, so we need to make sure that we educate other providers as well about these autoimmune conditions. So that is the number one key, is educating providers. And sometimes, we don't have time as patients, so we need to push for more education on that. Number two is, collaborate. We work with the local rheumatologist here where we get direct referrals. So we are part of a program where we can get direct referrals from rheumatologists. We can, if a patient goes to a food pantry, we could get a referral directly from them if they have lupus or, homeless or whatever it is that they're going through. So I think collaboration is key here, and being able to provide these resources and tap into who we are in the community. So I think for us, that has been one of the things, and one of the things that we've been focusing on is creating these relationships, collaboration, and that is what's going to help the individual. Because when you get a diagnosis, your life is going to change. You're impacted immediately. So what do? The provider is not going to go with you home and help you deal with these diagnoses that are going to impact not just you, but your family, your community, where you work. Perhaps you're not going to work. So getting these resources is important. So again, working with the providers, making sure that we have the support groups available, making sure that the support group leaders know how to handle these situations, that they are trained properly, that they provide the education, the support that is needed. Right now there is, like I was saying, there's so many things and barriers that we have to healthcare, to access to healthcare, and resources is one. Learning about what kind of treatments you're going to be getting. How do you get access to those treatments? How are you going to pay for those treatments? All of it is important. And one of the things that I love that we have been doing is we are empowering the community. So if you do not know where to go, reach out to your local support group leaders and find out, different organizations are out there. We've met amazing people that are ready to give you the resources. So knowing that you're not alone is very important.
Yeah.
And I would just,
yeah, please.
I was just going to piggyback on that. And I think everything that Estella said is, is spot on. And I think, as advocacy organizations, we are looking to provide those tools to help you advocate for yourself, right? Because that can be tough, and a lot of it is understanding the history of your condition and keeping that documented, and going in and talking to your provider and having questions that you want to discuss, and documenting those things, right? And how do you do that, right? That's a lot of information to kind of coalesce in one place. And I think sort of the second part of this conversation you'll get into with some of these innovators in the tech space, and how you kind of marry the health with the tech. And, as a community, we all work together to help provide these resources as well. And, Estella and Juana, we partnered on a Lupus shared decision-making tool, which was to help disseminate information about this, right? Which was an app that Lupus patients could get on and, learn some information about the different kinds of treatments that are available, be able to track their symptoms, document conversations with their doctors. And so I think, these things are coming about, right? These tools are coming about to help patients, because it's a lot to try to understand and keep track of. And so I think looking for these tools that our organizations provide and resources and understanding and awareness, but there's, kind of to parlay into the tech space and the conversation, that these things are becoming more available to help you, understand and track how you're managing your disease. And I think that can help you be advocate. Yeah, you've got to advocate for yourself. Nobody knows our bodies like ourselves, and we're the CEOs of our bodies, right? And so we have to empower ourselves to be able to take a leadership role in our own health. And I think there's lots of ways to accomplish that.
Mm-hmm. Any last words from you, Mary? Because we do have to wrap.
Yeah, I would just add, I would echo everything that others said. And unfortunately, navigating the healthcare system in today's current environment is really challenging. And all of our organizations provide resources to help you do that. But I think we are still very much in the space of needing to be our own advocates. And I think, as Molly was saying, making sure we've all been guilty as women, running around, running our lives, our families' lives, our work, setting, all of that, showing up for an appointment and saying, yeah, I have been experiencing this symptom, and yeah, gosh, I don't know how often. And then once you start tracking it, you realize, gosh, it's 2 or 3 times a week or 2 or 3 times a day. Actually being able to articulate what that symptom is, when and how often, and if there are any triggers from diet or, weather or anything else, is really going to help your provider understand what's happening. And so we're the ones that own that story and have to make the most of that time in front of the provider. Unfortunately, it's still very much that way. So the more we can do, as Juana was saying, to empower ourselves and take control of that and really show up in a way that, yeah, Juana looks amazing and she's going to show up to every appointment looking amazing. That doesn't mean there's not something going on. And all of us are going to show up that way. And sometimes it is visible, but a lot of times it's not. And so it's really important to own that and to say, whether I'm looking amazing or not, I need you to know that this is impacting my life. I couldn't get out of bed yesterday, or, I'm experiencing this every single day now. And so I need to know, what tests can you do? Who do I need to see? Just asking those right questions. And that's the part we can control. We can't control how the provider is going to respond. We need that to be a partnership, but we can control how we show up in that space. And so I think that's really important.
Yeah. And just knowing as women that if 78% of autoimmune, conditions are felt, or it's felt by women, like educating ourselves so that we can not only advocate for ourselves, but also listen out when our friends, family, loved ones may be going through something similar, so that we know the numbers and we know that that could be a possibility, because autoimmune conditions can be so, hidden or not as, external. So with that, and thank you, Molly, for that great kind of transition into the next section. I want to thank you all for joining, sharing your stories, talking about your work. We'll be sharing links and resources from all of you in the follow-up so that everyone on the call can have access to that. So thank you all for joining this panel.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So to go right into the next portion, discussing investment in autoimmune health innovations, I'd like to welcome on our panel. We have Rory Stanton with Ayla Health, Lisa Lechner, Fembright Health, Marina Tarasova, Paloma Health, and Maureen Flecky, Cedars-Sinai Health Ventures. Great to have you all here. We will jump right into it. I think it was great hearing that context from our patient advocacy groups and right into what they were saying, after the education, the diagnosis, now we're here. How do we help patients manage, track, and live, with and through these conditions? So I guess I'll start with Maureen. And maybe actually, let's just give introductions first. So Maureen, why don't we start with you and then we'll go around to our founders.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. And that was such a powerful session from the patient advocacy groups. And I think that the comments going back and forward in the chat just highlight all of the issues that we're talking about. And so anyways, just thank you for that. That was, it was amazing to hear what those folks were saying and all of the engagement from the folks that are listening in. So I'm Maureen Kluicki. I'm a partner at Cedars-Sinai Health Ventures. We're a Series A and B fund with a very broad thesis around healthcare. And I would say that if you narrowed it down, it would be really about improving patient outcomes. And so I'm thrilled to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Lisa.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you all today. My name is Lisa Lechner. I'm the co-founder of Fembright Health. To provide some context on Fembright, we're a digital health company dedicated to transforming the lifelong journey of women living with chronic and critical health conditions. To this end, we're leading with a focus on autoimmune health, which is an area that, as we've been hearing, is under-recognized, underserved, and predominantly affects women. We believe that women's health should be addressed in a comprehensive manner, meeting women exactly where they are in their busy lives, and should take their gender, age, life stage, ethnicity, and background into consideration. Our goal is to bring our solution to the market. We're still in development, and provide each woman living with an autoimmune condition with access to the information and continuous care management she needs to both empower and help her advocate for her own unique health and life journey.
Great. Rory.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rory Stanton. I'm founder and CEO of Isla Health, and we are building a virtual integrative multi-specialty clinic for the millions of Americans living with autoimmune diseases. Huge area within women's health, of course. I've talked to hundreds of patients to really understand how to design and build our product, similar to what was mentioned in the previous portion of the talk around kind of importing real world data about how these diseases are progressing and impacting women's lives and incorporating that into our personalized treatment plans. We recently launched in California, Colorado, and soon to be in Texas, and plan to be able to deliver this multi-specialty clinical approach that really incorporates the patient at the center of their care across the United States over the coming years. Thanks so much for having me.
And Rhia, after you give your intro, we'll jump right into kind of the first question of, what's the story after hearing, the last panel. I think it's great just to hear like what inspired you to start your company, and what is the impact you hope to have with it to solve some of these challenges.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for having me, everyone. Great to connect, and just hearing some of the stories in the previous segment was so powerful and reminds us why we all do what we do today. So I'm Rhia Tarasova. I'm co-founder and CEO of Paloma Health. We're the first of its kind virtual clinic focused on thyroid conditions. And many of you may know, many of you might not but the main etiology of thyroid conditions is autoimmune. And so we're actually educating many folks and stakeholders of the fact that autoimmunity is very important to a whole host of things, and thyroid being very predominantly one of them. Of course, our patient base is primarily women, as we know the data around autoimmunity and specifically thyroid conditions affect women. We're a virtual clinic, so we have doctors, we provide home testing and end-to-end care to manage the autoimmune condition known as Hashimoto's and or hypothyroidism. Many people are probably nodding their heads, I imagine, in the audience, and know someone that suffers here. So we're live in 35 states. All our care can be done from home. We prescribe all of the different types of medications. We really focus on improving and hearing the patient and what they're going through, and not just looking at a lab number and telling a patient that, what they need to do based on a lab number. So we hire physicians specifically with an empathetic and thoughtful and caring mindset. It's a very important insight that we've gathered and have actualized. We're live in 35 states. We're really excited to be doing the work that we do. We've been around for almost 3 years and have I've seen that we've impacted many people, and we have so many more to go. Happy to dive into the genesis of how we built Paloma Health too. I've been in healthcare my whole career in various companies, large and small. I worked in biopharma companies, primarily bringing innovative drugs to market, and had actually the opportunity to work on a thyroid drug, which happens to be one of the most prescribed drug in the US, and just really becoming fascinated with how this small gland affects one's body from head to toe. And it's not really well understood in a lot of segments of healthcare, and there's a lot of unmet needs with the care that goes into it. My personal background is I'm from Russia and spent my summers in Ukraine, and a lot of my family was affected by the Chernobyl incident, and they suffered with thyroid conditions as a result. So I've seen aunts and cousins have a lot of medical issues as a result of the poor thyroid care that their poor thyroid issues and the care that they received as a result. And kind of just was a combination of my professional and that experience that really made me realize and want to build something to help these patients. And there's over 25 million of them in the US. There's some reports that Hashimoto's, that folks with Hashimoto's, that there's actually 70 million of them in the US, but we need better data to really characterize it today. So really glad to be here. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Getting back to you, Maureen, and Maureen and Marina, have you all you've worked together?
Yes. Yeah, I was lucky enough to invest in Paloma Health in the seed round. So
amazing. So kind of getting to that and hearing your perspective, Maureen, in when you're hearing autoimmune companies pitch, or what are you looking for? I guess just kind of speaking to, I think there is a bigger need than we have companies, honestly, right now. But what stands out for you?
Well, I can even think back when I met Marina and the Paloma Health team and was just learning more. And I think the education piece is key. And some of the points that stuck out to me as we were looking at the company was this huge market size that felt like it was hiding in plain sight, 25 million on the low end, as Marina kind of points out. Also, just digging into sort of data, hard facts and numbers, the fact that the drug that's prescribed to treat thyroid disorders is kind of, depending on the month, depending on the geo, the first or second most prescribed drug in the United States, which was just amazing to me. Also, I think that virtual care can be really impactful when you have a mismatch in supply and demand between the providers and the number of patients. And so just the relatively few number of endocrinologists versus the number of patients was something that really stuck out to me. And then also just thinking of it as a chronic condition, something that lends itself to a care team approach instead of just kind of that one touch point with a physician, every 6 weeks, every quarter, every 6 months. It felt like there was a real opportunity to improve the lives of patients. And so those were the kind of things that my team and I went, oh my, this is so much bigger than we ever imagined. And we think there's a huge opportunity here.
Yeah, no, that's really, really interesting perspective. And I think it's so important, especially in a sector where there is a lot of need, to really come out with the opportunity. And showcase that as best as possible. Because I know, we can talk about the problem all day and how important it is, but what's actually going to be the impact, and what's this, huge market opportunity, which I think is
and one of the questions, just to add on to some of the comments that had been said before, one of the questions that we asked when we were looking to invest, it's like, why isn't there more discussion of this, given how huge the market size and given how big the pain point is? And unfortunately, a lot of it went back to it being a quote hidden women's health condition, where I think that there's a lot of stigma, a lot of gaslighting, and it's just like so terrifying to see that when you're thinking about the number of patients in the US and in the globe that are dealing with this. So
yeah, no, great point. I want to go back to Lisa and Rory, and I think so talking about kind of origin story and what inspired you to get into this business, but also there's a couple questions in the chat around, how you're tracking outcomes and how kind of to the point of investment and getting that attention, you're able to reduce costs, reduce time, and track that so that you can measure the actual impact. So Lisa, why don't we start with you and just, briefly on that origin story, and then really on how you're measuring that impact so that you're, able to get the attention that you need.
Sure. So on our origin, Fembrite is a culmination of my and my co-founder Julie's long-standing interest, passion, and careers in science and healthcare. We have 40 years combined in the healthcare industry, starting with careers in big pharma out of university, and then more recently in the last few years in both our respective and now together endeavors in the startup space. I'm going to try to make this short. We've all had, I'm sure everybody can speak to this, but we've had our various roles in our careers, in this case, as healthcare executives and also family caregivers, kids, parents, partners, and also as patients ourselves, lots of opportunity to observe and experience firsthand how we characterize it as frustration and ambiguity and helplessness that is felt by many patients and their families when trying to access care, information, et cetera. And there's always more questions than answers. So for us, it was clear, Julia and I started talking a couple of years ago, there's a need for a better way for patients to navigate not only their own health, but also the healthcare system, particularly obviously, as we've been talking about in the case of chronic conditions. As we explored what our starting point would be, because we start off with, there are many chronic conditions. It was pretty obvious to us early on that autoimmune health was going to be our focus. We had had extensive experience with MS and RA, so that's multiple sclerosis and rheumatoid arthritis, if anyone isn't familiar, from both a professional and also personal stories and perspectives on those two. And we knew just from those two conditions that the space was under-recognized and underserved, and then found as we started looking around that it wasn't unique to those two autoimmune conditions, but all of them that predominantly they affect women. So we looked at that problem and said, okay, we have knowledge and experience to work on a solution to disrupt the current healthcare system and bridge the healthcare gap for women. So here's where we are at today. In terms of the outcomes, we're still in development and we're building that. So I don't have a specific, here's the 3 things or 5 things or 20 things. There's all I can say at this point. That I'll share is the list is long. I mean, that's one of the issues is figuring out what to look at with respect to, so we do say we will improve health outcomes and we also will improve quality of life. So we do think the 2 things go hand in hand. Improving health outcomes is great. You want to slow down progression, et cetera, et cetera. But the quality of life piece is also very important for us to measure and track and improve. And that, sorry, I'm just going to say on that piece, that also is I think somebody said before, but these conditions, even if you're in one specific autoimmune condition, they're very unique to each individual. And what we're finding with all our testing, and even you think of yourself, those are very unique to each individual of what their quality of life measures are that they are important to them and that they want to improve.
Yeah, great point. Rory.
Great. Yeah, so I'll be brief here. I started the company really, I had a background working in digital health, consulting with a number of the major life sciences companies, innovating and launching therapeutics in this space. And so got a broad exposure kind of across a number of different disease states about what that patient journey looked like from kind of pre-diagnosis, symptom awareness, all the way on to being on therapy, switching therapy, and kind of the challenges that arise both pre and post diagnosis. So having seen that, and then coupled with the fact that a number of my friends and actually close family members had very long diagnostic odysseys to, kind of ultimately getting their diagnosis, and then have had subsequently poor outcomes basically a response to that delayed diagnosis, really thought that this was an area that needed some severe innovation. So I think both on the kind of shortening that time to diagnosis and then getting patients on, to Lisa's point, everyone has a unique expression of the disease, even if there's 2 people living with the same condition. So leveraging data and new technologies to be able to support truly personalized care for each individual patient. Similar to what we're seeing in the oncology space, we really need kind of a more precision approach, or precision health approach to managing these complex diseases. In terms of how we're thinking about managing and kind of monitoring outcomes, I already mentioned we have a pretty robust symptom tracking adherence monitoring that patients can kind of self-report within the app themselves. And then we've built in kind of electronic patient-reported outcomes that are based on clinically validated outcome measures according to a number of the disease states that we're focusing on. So predominantly and initially in the rheumatology space, also in kind of the gastrointestinal space as well, kind of IBD care. We've built some of those things in, and we're starting to track that over time to understand how some of the interventions that we're deploying for these patients will ultimately impact disease progression and quality of life measures, as other panelists have mentioned on this call.
Yeah, amazing. Well, the time just kind of flew on by, so I am going to have to wrap things up. But what I'd love to do is I'll make sure Rena, Rory, Lisa, we get, we'll drop links. We just put them in the chat, but also in the follow-up email so that people have links to each of your companies. And also, if you have any sort of ask or connections you're looking for, I'd love to include those so that we can connect you to anyone on this call, anyone who wasn't able to make it. And then Maureen would love to stay in touch with you with the coalition and keep you involved in not only our autoimmune companies, but other women's health companies that we see.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all for joining. And we will wrap just with a few comments from G2G Consulting. So we've been working with G2G for a couple of years now to keep us informed on all things policy and advocacy. So I'd like to bring Katie on screen here, Katie and or Liz, just to give a quick overview on policy updates, autoimmune and otherwise within women's health.
Great. Thank you so much. This is so exciting to kick things off with this great event. Thank you all. So we at G2G do all the government affairs sort of policy work tied to the coalition. And I was in that room, New York City, late fall of 2019, when this all came together and we talked about all these gaps. And so what we're addressing today with autoimmune disease applies, as we all know, much broader. And so we're trying to address all those areas. So real quick, we'll move through the slides. So there's a lot of exciting details that came out in the president's budget, and there's a lot of initiatives happening in Congress. I think that there are many members who want to address autoimmune disease gaps, other broader women's health issues. They just need to be educated. We just need to give them sort of the key talking points, the key areas and policies that they can change, and they're ready to work with us. So next slide just gives you a quick summary of autoimmune disease funding in the omnibus. That is that huge funding measure that just passed Congress really just weeks ago. It should have been done the end of last year, but it was delayed. 10 million, you can see for lupus is a specific line in the defense appropriations bill just for lupus disease research, which is great. 20 million for multiple sclerosis, but there's no general autoimmune line. So that is something that I think needs to change. And the CDMRP stands for Congressionally Directed Military Research Program. That is a huge funding source for a lot of health conditions, such as breast cancer, prostate cancer, a lot of different conditions. And because NIH, it just gets overloaded, another way to direct research dollars is through the defense program. So it's really vital that we address a lot of these health issues impacting women and minorities through that program. So that's why we wanted to highlight that. The next slide gives you information about the budget. As I said, that just came out from the president. There's $5 billion for ARPA-H, which is that advanced research program that's very similar to DARPA. So it's all about really pushing the envelope on innovation, bringing things to market that will really transform healthcare, patient care. And so obviously autoimmune disease, any kind of gaps that are contributing to health disparities, racial disparities, women's health, that is going to fit in nicely with this program. So that's exciting. There's $1 billion in the omnibus that was just signed into law. So there already is some funding for this program. There's a couple details that need to happen, like Congress has to create some authorities. That's going to happen very soon. And then all of you that are in this field, you can start applying for these opportunities. So that's going to be exciting. Biomedical research, 49 billion, 470 million across these other programs that also directly impact women's health. There's lots of exciting things happen. We can't really cover all of them. Next slide just talks about some things going forward. We are working on a special bill to address women's health inequities. So that'll be a great piece of legislation. We will tell you more about that as it's getting finalized. We're still in the drafting process. We're also working the appropriations process. We had some great successes last year. We're going to keep building on those. Diversity in clinical trials. A lot of you talked about that issue. We're going to keep promoting that. And then we've got our own congressional briefing coming up that we'd love to have you join in on April 11th. So there's a lot going on. Please engage in the Women's Health Innovation Coalition. It's a great organization, a great convener, and a great way for us to then turn a lot of the issues that you're working on into legislative policy changes that can really make a difference. So thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you, Liz and Katie and G2G. And I think it's been amazing to have this policy kind of piece of the coalition. And honestly, all of your perspectives has guided us in what we do. So your input, your feedback, your challenges is dictating, what we do throughout our year. So we will be holding 3 to 4 kind of specific policy roundtables that we hope you guys can join. And then we will definitely share the info about this policy briefing that they are putting together on April 11th, because it'd be really great to have, as many people tuning in and a part of it as possible. So thank you again. And thank you to everyone for joining. Thanks for hanging in there. I know we ran a little bit over. This is our first event of our 2022 Women's Health Innovation Forum series. There were so many amazing resources and conversations in that chat. I'll make sure our team kind of puts together some of the highlights and sends that out so you guys have a copy. I feel like it was like rapid fire throughout the event. I love that. So we want to be able to share those resources. We'll also be listing we constantly are updating resources on our website, our Women's Health Innovation Coalition website. And please reach out with any questions or people that you missed connecting with. That is our whole purpose here. We want to make sure you guys are all connected to each other, have the resources you need, and bring together different stakeholders in women's health to progress innovation. So thank you all again, and we will see you again soon.